Hello and welcome to Crosstalk. I'm Peter Lavelle. Covering Syria, are we witnessing a new generation of warfare, an information war? There appears no doubt Western media aims to construct a consensus to provide overwhelming public support for regime change in Damascus. Is the truth the greatest casualty of this conflict? To Crosstalk Syria and the ongoing information war, in Tehran we have Sreeram Chaulia. He is a professor and dean at Jindal School of International Affairs. All right, gentlemen, Crosstalk rules in effect. If we can go to Tehran, what do you think of the coverage of the media coverage of this conflict? It is a civil war, after all.
Well, the ICRC is now calling it a civil war, and that's a welcome change, because until then the media was painting the so-called Free Syrian Army as a bunch of ragtag guerrillas with no training and with very light weapons, and that they're outnumbered, and that basically this is a war of the state against its own people. The fact is, on the ground, the ICRC itself now says it's a civil war, which acknowledges basically that the opposition is heavily armed. It has the capacity to inflict damage on the government forces, and that most obviously defectors, a bunch of defectors with no training, cannot be so heavily armed and organized. It means there is external support. That part is totally been covered up in the Western media projection of this war. It's being shown as some kind of indigenous movement of freedom fighters against the Assad dynasty, when the fact remains that, you know, there is significant external support, and we need to really uncover that. And that's why we need alternative media, because otherwise it will be a battle of perceptions that will be lost by those who need a peaceful transfer of power in Syria, rather than this kind of regime change that is engineered through in a form of a silent coup with the connivance of the Western media.
Mr. Ambassador, what do you think about that? Sketchy, that's a good word for some of them.
Yeah, well, a small correction, I'm Indian right now in Tehran.
I'd like to make,
but anyway, I was talking more about the Free Syrian Army, not so much about the civilian population, which may have grievances against the Assad dynasty for 40 years. I'm talking about, let us analyze the roots, the funding, the etymology, for lack of a better word, of this Free Syrian Army. Where has it come about? It was being described as nothing, and now they're saying they're about to take power and they're already in Damascus. So how did this transformation happen in such a short time? And who are the forces that are behind this? Perhaps the ambassador has a view on this because he's in Israel.
Sreeram, if we go back to you in Tehran, what do you think about that?
Well, I think the ambassador is spot on. I think civil war is also a misleading term, because the term internal war and civil war have been often used. Even during the Cold War, some of the worst, most barbaric proxy wars financed by East and West in Africa and parts of Asia and Latin America were called civil wars. The point is that the regime, as well as its opponents, as we know, have some sectarian divisions, but this is being heightened by usage of such terms. We need to highlight the international war economy that is behind this whole Syrian game, rather than simply calling it a domestic uprising. It was a domestic uprising, but domestic uprisings can get hijacked. And that's what we need to highlight. Otherwise, the narrative will go towards another Security Council resolution, followed by a possible NATO intervention. We've been trying to avoid this for a while, and Russia's somehow holding the fort. But I'm afraid that the propaganda war is now so advanced that they're making it look like, 20,000 dead, 25,000 dead, all kinds of figures coming from London, and who knows who's behind all these things.
Okay, if I can go to Tehran, what about the sectarian?
Remember that 900 people were killed in Egypt.
Well, I would also disagree with the ambassador on one point about endurance of people. Endurance of people, Ambassador, if you look at Myanmar, 42 years of brutal military rule, and now you have evolutionary transformation towards possible democratic future, and the people have not taken up arms, the Burman majority. So it's not necessary that violence is the answer. And I would rather side with Stephen on this point, to say that, Mahatma Gandhi once said, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. And I'm afraid that Syria is too much bloodshed, and this could have been avoided. It could have been slower. The transformation could have been slower. And, people struggle for decades to get the desired outcome. What is the hurry? Who are the regional powers who wanted a quick regime transfer? Why are they pushing for it so fast and for a quick change? This needs to be investigated. What is the strategic game behind this whole so-called Syrian uprising?
One of the things Western media doesn't like to admit is that Assad does have some popularity with some groups, but it's not mentioned too often.
Yeah, and so that's the binary. You see, when you want to create a black and white situation, when most of these kinds of conflicts have gray areas, that's when you need binaries and clear opposites. You need a villain, and you need a heroic uprising of the entire population. That's been the legend of democratization in Western popular myth. But remember, even Samuel Huntington, who wrote about the waves of democratization, talked about how most democratic changes happen through peaceful negotiation and transfer of power, rather than through mass uprisings. So this kind of the masses running over the gates and throwing the dictator out, I think that's the kind of image they want to create, because then you can justify foreign intervention saying that the masses need help. And the point is that the masses in many parts of the world, when we fought for self-determination in our parts in India, we didn't take foreign help, we didn't have external military assistance to throw the British out. So this is the kind of situation we are faced with, where the liberation saga is entwined with neo-imperial objectives. And unless we separate the two, I'm afraid that the Middle East is heading from Arab Spring into a long spell of war, regional warfare, with sectarian elements, as well as with this kind of vicious foreign intervention that is couched as humanitarianism and sympathy for the human rights of the people of Syria. Humanitarian imperialism, we are living in that era, and I'm expecting that it is on the downswing now because of the cuts to the US military budget and the European Union's own economic problems. But still, that game is being played out. Humanitarianism and the whole call for saving and somehow supporting the people of Syria from outside. And that is what I'm really afraid we are heading into, where the liberators are going to be foreigners once more.
Many thanks to my guests today in Tel Aviv, Tehran, and in San Jose. And thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time, and remember, crosstalk rules.